And when the war started in Bosnia, I wrote a lot about that. I realized that Western policy on Bosnia was making mistakes. Well, the biggest impetus really was the political situation in Kosovo and the fact that I became involved in public debate and commentary on the situation in Yugoslavia long before then. I should just explain, I began my career as an academic at my university, Cambridge. I then became a commentator for the Spectator magazine and then foreign editor of that magazine. And this was at the end of the 1980s, when everything was happening in the former communist bloc. And because I knew Serbo-Croat, I was sort of following quite closely events in Yugoslavia. And when the war started in Bosnia, I wrote a lot about that. I realized that Western policy on Bosnia was making mistakes because they just didn't know, the policymakers, the politicians, the diplomats, they just didn't know what they were dealing with. And they were accepting what were basically propaganda claims from Belgrade. For example, that Bosnia was an invented country, that Tito had just made it up on the map by drawing lines arbitrarily, when in fact it has historic borders going back to the 17th century. And the claim that, you know, they were all really Serbs historically, which again is ridiculous. And I was involved as a commentator and also sort of more privately as a, what can I say, an activist against this sort of Belgrade propaganda. And I realized that you could not blame the politicians for making these mistakes because they could not just go to a bookshop and find a book on the history of Bosnia that would explain the realities. There was nothing available. So one day I just thought, well, I will write the book myself. And so very quickly I wrote a history of Bosnia. I say quickly, it took me 1 year. And that was published in 1994.